Most photographers aspire to be great and make images that leave a mark on the medium. Doing this isn't about likes, virality, follower counts, or chasing trends. It's about something entirely different. To understand what that is, you need to look at someone who created undeniably great work and is universally loved by all, from highly skilled photographers all the way to those who never even picked up a camera. Ansel Adams is one of the few photographers who fits this criteria. He's widely regarded as the greatest landscape photographer of all time, and is possibly one of the few photographers nearly anyone can name, even if they don't care about photography. While it may be impossible to reach the same levels of renown as him, examining how he achieved greatness can show us a path worth following. This is 10 Ways to be an Undeniably Great Photographer, Ansel Adams. This video is brought to you by Skillshare. The first 500 people to use the QR or link in the description can get a 1-month free trial. Any art that has a significant impact on the lives of others has the ability to become undeniably great. Ansel Adams did this through his photos that helped the conservation movement. According to the National Park Service, Adams' work became an important part of the American conservation movement, providing a constant reminder of the landscapes that need to be protected. Prior to Adams, many of the locations that he would go on to photograph had been presented in beautiful drawings and paintings. But the sharp, detailed, ultra-realistic representation of his photos would bring attention to many of these locations in a new way. In 1936, he was chosen as a representative of the Sierra Club, a group dedicated to preserving the wilderness of the Pacific Coast, to use his photography to advocate for the creation of a new park in the Kings River Sierra. The group chose him because he knew photography had been effective in the creation of Yosemite Valley in 1864 and Yellowstone in 1872. Adams' initial trip to Washington did not result in the creation of the park as they had hoped, but it did start to move things in the right direction. A year later, he created a book titled Sierra Nevada, The John Muir Trail. Legendary photographer Alfred Stieglitz responded to seeing the book by saying, "What perfect photography! I'm an idolater of perfect workmanship of any kind. And this is truly perfect workmanship." When the book found its way into the hands of President FDR, Secretary of the Interior, he made sure that the president himself saw it. FDR was so impressed with the photos that the secretary gave him the book. Then, in 1940, the new park opened after intense lobbying from FDR and his secretary. Adams reflected on this, stating, "I think the pictures did have a helpful effect on getting Congress to pass the bill, but no one will ever know whether it was 1% or 5%. Or whether it was entirely imaginary." It's hard to imagine creating anything with that level of impact, but as long as you're creating something that has some impact on people, it has the ability to become undeniably great. It's incredibly easy to get caught up in creating work that follows trends and gains traction in the here and now, but making art that inspires others during your life and well after it's over is another sign of greatness. Ansel Adams definitely did that. I'd assume he's had more of an impact on a single genre of photography than any other photographer past or present. It's hard to imagine a landscape photographer who dislikes his work, or has never been moved by it. The Instagram account dedicated to his work is a clear example of how much that work still resonates with people. It has 360,000 subscribers, and every photo has a myriad of comments praising the work, which isn't bad for a photographer who died long before social media was even part of the conversation. Another key aspect of creating something that is undeniably great in the arts is interacting with other art forms and attempting to gain a better understanding of them, so that you can in turn inform the medium that you more regularly use. Ansel Adams found this connection through playing the piano and understanding music. He said, "Studying music gave me a fine basis for the discipline of photography. I'd have been a real sloppy Joe if I hadn't had that. In music, you have this absolutely necessary discipline from the very beginning, and you're constructing various shapes and controlling values. Your notes have to be accurate, or else there's no use playing. There's no casual approximation. The more I study photography, the more interested I am in mediums like painting that have the potential to enhance my photography in a variety of ways. I use Skillshare to begin to understand how to create paintings that will hopefully more fully flesh out my photography work. The course, Acrylic Painting, Learn the Basics for Beginners, made starting the process possible by giving me step-by-step instructions, as well as helping me to understand the tools that I would need and how to use them. If you want to learn about anything, Skillshare has the largest online learning community for creatives, where there are thousands of classes on different topics such as photography, filming, design, editing, and more, taught by industry experts. On Skillshare, there are classes for hobbyists, creative professionals, and everyone in between. You can learn a skill from scratch, build a creative habit, and level up your career. World-class industry professionals teach there. Professional illustrators, renowned designers, fashion photographers, and wildly successful entrepreneurs. So you can learn directly from the people who really know what they're talking about. You'll complete projects and get feedback from teachers and fellow members. You can also use this to make connections with your peers and those instructors, all of which helps guide you on your creative or professional journey. And you can learn at your own pace. The first 500 people to use the QR or link in the description can get a 1-month free trial. This supports Skillshare, this channel, and your creative journey. As social media starts to die off and it becomes more meaningless to make stuff just for the sake of following trends, I hope that people will start making art again for themselves and for the sake of making art. Stuff like this will have time to breathe and hopefully become undeniably great in the process. Doing whatever you can to elevate your medium is another aspect of being regarded as undeniably great. There's so much work out there that does little to push the medium forward. But it's not impossible to do small things that help elevate your medium. For example, taking street photos that have a level of empathy, and attempt to be real art instead of continuing to fill the void with trendy nonsense. This helps build up the entire genre instead of knocking it down when we do this collectively. When you look at Adams as someone who did this for his own genre, it's funny to see someone as highly regarded as Bresson say, "The world is falling to pieces, and all Adams and Weston photograph is rocks and trees." When in reality, all those highly refined photos of rocks and trees were allowing landscape photography and other genres to be taken more seriously and seen as fine art. According to theartstory.com, Adams was committed throughout his professional life to the promotion of photography as a fine art. In 1940, he helped to establish the photography department at the Museum of Modern Art, later co-curating its first exhibition, 60 Photographs, a survey of camera aesthetics, with the department's first curator, Beaumont Newhall. In the years that followed, he developed a close friendship with Beaumont and Nancy Newhall, traveling with them to the Southwest and New England in the late 1940s. In addition to their work at the museum, Adams and Nancy Newhall collaborated in the 1950s and 1960s on several books and exhibitions. Ansel Adams' role in the creation of national parks and the elevation of photography as an art form was largely possible because he chose to take photos of things that really mattered to people. His images of the American landscape resonated deeply with both photographers and conservationists, striking an emotional chord that made the work unforgettable. Had he focused on subject matter with less collective significance, his influence wouldn't have had the same impact. Monolith, the Face of Half Dome, is one of Ansel Adams' most highly regarded and successful photos. According to the Ansel Adams Gallery, today, the image stands as not only one of Adams' finest works, but also as a lasting and iconic depiction of one of the most unique spots in the American wilderness. There are so many times now where we see the same or similar images captured at exactly the same locations, and these don't lean into that uniqueness at all. It also keeps decent photographers from really standing out. Now it seems to become more difficult day by day to find locations or vantage points that are significantly different, but to some extent it always has been. Adams had photographed Half Dome plenty of times before creating this iconic image, but none of his earlier attempts met the standards of what he was trying to make. So he decided to try to shoot it from a location known as the diving board. To reach this location that sat 3,500 feet above ground level required a challenging hike, and it was made even more challenging with the 40-pound pack he carried that had a camera, a handful of filters and lenses, and 12 glass plate negatives. This pursuit of perfect locations to create the perfect photos became a trademark of his process. In this specific case, it ended up allowing him to create a photo that would launch his career into everything that it would become. Taking the time, putting in the effort, and going the extra mile are other things that you can do to become undeniably great. One of the most challenging aspects of aspiring to greatness for many of us is consistency. Personally, I'm all over the place in what I'm interested in and exploring techniques I want to use with my photography. That in itself is an important part of any creative journey. But at some point, if you want to create high quality work, you gotta choose what you want to shoot and dial it in. Consistency is something that Adams was very capable of. He was incredibly consistent throughout his entire photography career once he sorted out what his style would be. At the time that he started taking photos, pictorialism was very popular. This style involved a lot of out-of-focus elements and adding aspects that gave images a painterly quality, essentially the exact opposite of what Adams would eventually become known for. Once he found his voice, he became one of the people that promoted what is known as pure photography or straight photography, and that became the style that he carried throughout the rest of his life, with sharp focus becoming a primary element. Technical proficiency both in the field and in the darkroom became a huge part of everything that he created from then onwards, and he documented everything that went into that crafted style, that he put into text that eventually became as highly regarded as his photos to some of us. To be consistent, you have to have a clear idea of exactly what it is you want to create. To do this, Adam used the process of visualization. According to text found in his book, The Camera, The process of visualization requires learning to see as the camera sees. We accomplish this by understanding how the camera film development sequence modifies the subject as it records it. Once these processes are understood, we can anticipate as we view the subject the transformation that occurs in each stage of the sequence. Printing is another aspect of photography that Adams covered in great detail. In his book, The Print, he states that, in many ways, I find printing the most fascinating aspect of black and white photography. It's especially rewarding to me when I'm going through thousands of negatives I've never printed, to find that I recall the original visualization as well as discovering new beauty and interest, which I hope to express in the print. And if that isn't the kind of language that makes you want to step into a darkroom and make an image come to life, I don't know what is. It's this kind of passion for the traditional techniques of photography that keep people coming back to shooting and developing film and printing in darkrooms, even though there's way more practical ways to go about it today. And it's that kind of enthusiasm for the art that you create that has the ability to make you undeniably great in your field. Gatekeeping is one of those terms that's used a lot these days, but when I see it, it seems to be a reflection of the person's own laziness, expecting information that's readily available to be spoon-fed to them. If you really are gatekeeping knowledge, maybe Ansel Adams' life and work is the inspiration you need to start giving it away more easily. Sharing knowledge is one of the aspects of Ansel Adams' life that made him undeniably great. Through his 5 books titled The Camera, The Negative, The Print, Natural Light Photography, and Artificial Light Photography, you can learn the majority of information that is required to understand photography inside and out. On his reasoning for sharing his knowledge, he said, "The obligation of all creative people is to keep creativity moving," which I completely agree with, and was the basis for starting this channel. I love finding more obscure photographers and sharing that information with anybody who engages with this channel. If you all share the knowledge that you have in a similar kind of way, that'll help elevate photography as a whole. And again, is another step towards becoming undeniably great. Adams was only allowed to share the amount of information that he did because of the amount of effort that he put into achieving technical excellence. This desire to create the highest quality image possible also played a huge part in why he was able to create the work that he did. We have to attempt to achieve a similar level of excellence to get anywhere near what Ansel Adams was able to do. Studying certain aspects of any medium allows artists to create techniques others can use for their benefit. Ansel Adams, along with portrait photographer Fred Archer, developed the zone system in this way. It was created through their study of how light impacts sensitive materials. Zone 0 is pure black, Zone 5 is middle gray, and Zone 10 is pure white. You meter to match the exposure of middle gray for the subject that you want to expose. This then ensures the correct exposure. The reason for doing this is to create the perfect negative, so you don't have to rely on things like printing materials to make up for what you lack as a photographer. As Adams put it himself in The Camera, the zone system is helpful in understanding the relationships of subject luminances, film densities, and print values. So study other techniques, come up with new ones, dive deep into the mediums that you're about, and try to come up with techniques that'll help others benefit in similar ways. Obviously, the zone system is one of those fundamental things that are harder to come up with at this point since nearly everything in any field has been covered. But if more of us dig deeper into these techniques and share them with each other, we're only bound to collectively get better as a result. There's no better way in my mind to validate your greatness in anything than by showing your full commitment to it. Coming back to photography over and over again, even after you've created a variety of great images or great projects, shows a love and reverence for it that cannot be faked. Ansel Adams took his first photo in 1960 at the age of 14. He then went on to create images until the year of his death in 1984, at the age of 82. This doesn't mean you have to have created images as long as him to validate your commitment to the craft and to be considered great, but having a love and passion for a craft is something that cannot be ignored. And you'll definitely make something great eventually if you're that obsessed with it, and if you put that much time and consideration into dialing in your craft. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, keep developing.